President Buhari inaugurates Nigeria's largest integrated feed mill and poultry feeding farm.
We will share with the international community the challenges that we have been facing and the successes.
Nigeria rolls out agenda for 72nd United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Abuja State government declares 2 days curfew to forestall breakdown of law and order.
Good morning, Nigeria. Today focuses on the JAMB cutoff mark controversy and university admission in Nigeria.
Since the establishment of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, in 1978, it has not been short of controversies in carrying out its mandate of exercising general control over the conduct of matriculation examinations into all universities, monotechnics, polytechnics, as well as colleges of education in the country.
Of course, now some of the controversies do not suggest that JAMB has not been up to the task assigned to it. This is because millions of Nigerians have passed through the system to get admitted into tertiary institutions in the country, and many have also credited JAMB with minimizing admission bottlenecks for universities in particular, and also ensuring that merit rather than other considerations plays the central role in the admission of candidates to institutions of higher learning.
You're quite right, Kingsley. It's also important to also note that so much has changed in the way JAMB conducts its operations with its clientele. Both candidates seeking admissions and the higher institutions offering such programs have grown and have changed tremendously.
Now, there are over 500 tertiary institutions in Nigeria. This, of course, will exclude the innovative enterprise institutions. And to those institutions, which is said more than 500, you have no fewer than 1.5 million candidates sitting in recent years for the joint matriculation examinations. They're seeking, of course, to be admitted into those institutions. Now, of the number, that's 1.5, just about 500,000 eventually get spaces, leaving, as it were, a large army of admission seekers who keep knocking on the doors of various institutions.
Everywhere, really. Well, clearly, JAMB has had its hands full over the years and has had to come up with innovations such as the online registration and for admission processing, and also the introduction of the computer-based examination tests.
Well, some of the initiatives, as it were, have become controversial, generating back and forth arguments. Now, the scrapping of the post-UTME examinations at some point by the federal government generated quite a lot of heat in the sector, while the recent adoption of 120 cutoff marks for universities, 100 for polytechnics and monotechnics, as well as 110 for the innovative enterprise institutions, is one that is still raging.
Now, while many have accused JAMB of resorting to this desperate measure in order to mop up the teeming number of candidates that do not make it to universities year in, year out, others simply say that the low cutoff marks will further bury the falling standard of education, especially in tertiary education in Nigeria. Now, some of the opinion also that JAMB may have altogether become irrelevant in the admission process, as universities, as well as other higher institutions of learning can and should be able to admit their students directly after setting their benchmarks and assessing candidates as well as their results. JAMB, they argue, should also remain just that role of a regulator.
Well, the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, JAMB, has refuted the allegations swirling around with regard to the setting of the cutoff mark at 120, insisting that it will put an end to what is described as a backdoor admission and other unwholesome practices often associated with admission into some institutions of higher learning in the country. And of course, JAMB had also indicated that the cutoff marks that were previously published were never strictly adhered to by most institutions.
Now, Kingsley, some arguments still continue that some institutions were going behind, well, that's from JAMB now, to admit candidates with far less scores, as well as others who even never sat for the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination have been admitted. And that explains that no institution is also obliged to actually take any candidate with about 120 marks, which is the benchmark now. When there are others with higher scores, the cutoff mark is just like it said, a benchmark, and just the barest minimum.
Well, in JAMB's thinking, the high cutoff mark is responsible for the flight of many Nigerians to, according to them, glorified secondary schools that are often called universities in neighboring countries, as well as the increasing pressure on the naira for parents and guardians to pay school fees in hard currency.
Even more surprising and controversial is the fact that the 120 cutoff mark decision was said to have been taken after the 2017-2018 policy meeting held in Abuja, where admission officers of all tertiary institutions in Nigeria, as well as registrars and vice-chancellors, provosts and rectors were in attendance and adopted, or everyone actually adopted the recommendation.
Well, Blessing, that is what the official statement from JAMB indicated, that, all stakeholders were present. But shortly after the meeting, a number of the stakeholders began, of course, repudiating the agreement that was said to have been reached at the meeting. Of course, we have seen a number of institutions announce that the minimum they are taking 200, that's for first generation universities. Exactly. Others going to 190, some not less than 180. But a few others, of course, have stuck to the 120 cutoff, which is just like scoring 30 marks in each of the subjects.
Well, that's how it's prescribed. Now, the question is, why the denial if this decision was actually reached? Were there from some form of coercion? Or were the results of the meetings actually falsified? What are the implications of the new 120 cutoff marks on the educational system? And how will this affect the quality of candidates and the institutions definitely who are going to be competing with other candidates or graduates from other parts of the world? Are we trying to lose out from the new arrangements, or what are we trying to gain or lose out from these arrangements?
Well, these and several other questions, of course, our guests will be taking a look at in our discussion segments on Good Morning Nigeria later on. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of the program.
My name is Blessing Abu. I also join Kingsley and welcome you to this midweek edition of Good Morning Nigeria. This is coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. In the course of the program, we'll bring to you our companion segments, the newspaper review. We'll take a look at business, we'll take a look at foreign, as well as entertainment news. Well, here's Laurie Balahassan with the morning news. Good morning to you, Laurie.
Good morning to you, Blessing and Kingsley.
Hi, Laurie.
Hello and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has formally inaugurated Nigeria's largest integrated feed mill and poultry breeding farm and hatchery in Kaduna State. At the ceremony, the president described the takeoff of the industry as a vote of confidence in his administration's policy focused on economic diversification for accelerated national development.
To take those who are coming to physically invest where our people can get jobs, learn expertise, and a lot of resources to our people. I very much thank Olam Group for the confidence they repose in Nigeria, and we thank them very much, and we assure them we will cooperate with them for further investment.
Critical issues of interest to Nigeria, Ghana, and the West African sub-region were brought to the front burner as President Muhammadu Buhari played host to his Ghanaian counterpart, Nana Akufo-Addo.
All of us have been very anxious about his well-being, and it was very good news to hear that he had returned. But we're Africans, and it meant that I had to come and see for myself how he was. And I'm very delighted to see that he's come back and very vigorous and, as always, very engaged on the issues of our day. So we've had a good half an hour together, reviewing matters both in Ghana and in Nigeria, as well as immediate matters to do with what's going on in the ECOWAS community.
Vice President Yemi Oshinbajo says the Buhari administration is determined towards ensuring the people of the Niger Delta region gets justice, equity and all that the region deserves. The Vice President was speaking at the Second National Council on Niger Delta holding in Akure, the Ondo State capital.
Do not expect pity or sympathy. What they want and what they deserve is the fulfillment of decades of promises that have been made to them. What they ask for is to be given an opportunity to fulfill the immense potential of this region and to enjoy the peace, security and development that our Constitution guarantees them as citizens. And this is exactly what the Buhari administration is focused on achieving. For us, the development of the Niger Delta region is not optional.
And experts in the mining and mineral resources development sectors are in Abuja to deliberate on how to reposition the sector as a viable alternative to oil. This is at the maiden edition of the National Council on Mines and Mineral Resources Development.
In spite of all these challenges, the journey so far has been very encouraging. We are able to shift from the old methods to some new ones. Today, revenue from this sector has tremendously increased. The trajectory has been very encouraging, and the reports from the National Bureau of Statistics has proved that of recent.
President Muhammadu Buhari will be leading a significant Nigerian delegation to the 72nd United Nations General Assembly to address major local and global issues of interest to Nigeria. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Geoffrey Onyama, at a pre-departure media conference stated that Nigeria has a clear mission which will also push for major reforms to get Africa a permanent seat on the Security Council.
International community, the challenges that we have been facing and successes. We believe, for instance, that the Security Council should be reformed. Of course, Nigeria remains ready to serve.
Nigeria has been elected to the position of Vice President of the United Nations World Tourism Organization's General Assembly. The election followed a unanimous acceptance by the organization's Commission for Africa's 60th meeting underway in China.
Minister is going to do a great job. I know this is a recognition of Nigeria's prominence and a recognition for the minister himself as a prominent personality who is acquiring a lot of respect and admiration. When you choose somebody to preside over the General Assembly, you choose a personality that's balanced, wise.
Abia State government has declared a curfew from 12th September 2017 to Thursday 14th September. A statement by Governor Okeze Ikpeazu reveals that this is in view of alleged confrontation between the Nigerian army and members of IPOB. Governor Ikpeazu acknowledged that the Operation Python dance is to check kidnapping, banditry, assassination and secessionist activities, amongst other forms of criminal activities. He therefore advised people living within the state to remain law-abiding and carry on their lawful businesses without fear, as efforts by government will be made to reduce friction between the civil populace and military personnel in the state. To broker lasting peace between warring groups in Ancha community of Miango, Basa local government area of Plateau State, Governor Simon Lalong has met with representatives of Fulani and Irigwe and heads of security agencies in the state. Paul Dama reports that the meeting resolved to tackle the root cause of the crisis and fish out perpetrators of violence and murder.
Because there is no, you can't say you are a victor, you are a vanquished in a crisis of this nature. We lost human beings. After we all agreed within ourselves to say we want to live in peace in Plateau State.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Blessing after this break. Good morning.
1967 to 1970, Nigeria went through a horrifying civil war. It didn't matter who was wrong or right. Everybody suffered. Those who fought that war say it should never happen again.
So a lot of people will say, but you were leading the first one. Yes, I led the first one. I don't think a second one is necessary. We should have learned from that first one. Otherwise, the dead would have been to no avail. It would all have been in vain.
The words of our elders are full of wisdom.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Achievers always believe in 100%. Breakfast isn't complete without Chivita 100% fruit juice. Made from real natural fruits with no added sugar. So to be at your best, start every day the Chivita 100% way. With 100% quality, 100% commitment, 100% goodness, 100% achievement. Start your day the Chivita 100% way.
This is the game I've been waiting for, and I get a headache. But I remembered Mom's advice.
Son, don't let anything stop you, okay?
When headache strikes, I always trust Sudrex. Because Sudrex acts fast to relieve headaches. Sudrex, win your day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
Caring for the patients of typhoid and diarrhea is our responsibility. And these illnesses are often spread due to eating with unclean hands. So I recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
That child should be in school, and that child should also be in school.
What is your business with what I do with my house help?
Your excuses are pathetically deficient and logically inadequate and inappropriate.
There is a guilty and selfish adult who has no scruples about depriving a child of education and robbing him of his future.
I don't go mind your business.
There is no school under a basin of groundnuts to be hawked or anywhere on the streets. Only danger. Early exposure to illicit behavior awaits a child on the street. This week, Professor John Bull takes a critical satirical look at children on the street. Keep it dates with us in the episode Street School.
Let my customer be. No harass him now.
This man is a child trafficker.
He doesn't come here every day. Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network. Glow. Unlimited.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Now time to take a look at the business report. The federal government of Nigeria has realized over 1.2 billion naira in 12 months from alien cards. Plus, oil prices rebound as OPEC announces fall in out. Let's join Amina Najim with our package this morning.
And the federal government has generated 1.2 billion naira in the last 1 year from the sale of the combined expatriate residence permit and aliens card to foreigners living and working in the country. A report from the Nigerian Immigration Service shows that the money was remitted to the federal government by Continental Transfer Technique Limited, the technical partners of the Nigerian Immigration Service. The Nigerian Stock Exchange resumed trading on Monday on a bearish note. For Tuesday's closing numbers, here is a graphic summary. And finally, oil oil prices recouped losses Tuesday. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries announced that its output fell in August, an indication that the production cutting deal with non-member countries is helping to tackle a supply glut. In its monthly report, OPEC also raised its demand forecast for 2018 and said the two hurricanes that hit the United States in recent weeks would have negligible impact on demand. International benchmark Brent crude edged 30% higher to $54.14 per barrel as it traded as low as $53.42 a barrel. The 14-country producer group said its oil output in August fell by 79,000 barrels per day in July to 32.76 million barrels per day in August. OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Barkindo said in a deal to cut the supply would help the market rebalance and strong demand would further reduce oil inventories. That is business news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues.
Thank you very much, Amina JAMB, for the business package. Next for us now, we go to the headlines and the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo TAB, is already seated. Welcome, Bayo.
Thank
Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
Yeah, Bayo, good to see you.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. All right, blessing.
All right, Kingsley. Now, we'll start off. Daily Trust have leading for the Daily Trust. Curfew declared in Aba as IPOB and soldiers clash. 3 killed in Rivers riots. We'll find the details right there, but continues on page 5. Just above that, we have 2 other stories below the nameplates. Federal government forms agro rangers to protect agric investments. All the details we find on page 10. And on page 3 is this story. Nigeria urges United Nations to stop ethnic cleansing in Myanmar. Moving further down, the photograph is that of the president as he commissioned a poultry farm and feed mill in Kaduna yesterday with him Governor Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State and the CEO Africa and Middle East Olam International with Governor Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi State or with other guests. Beside the photograph, that's the same story now. Buhari commissions $150 million hatchery feed in Kaduna. All the details on page 4. Now to politics. Appeal court says Katsina government can prosecute ex-governor Shema. All the details as well on page 4. Quickly now to another paper. This day has for the lead story the curfew in Abia State. Abia government imposes curfew on Aba after soldiers and IPOB clash. The writers to that story, 2 feared dead, others injured in Rivers in another fracas. NEJ Secretariat journalist attacked and army apologizes. Kanu's lawyer claims IPOB leader under house arrest and military says it's not after him. Ohaneze, Senate caucus ask federal government to end harassment in Southeast. Well, Kingsley, they have such
all right, the story on the situation in the Southeast, it's also on the front pages of both the New Telegraph and the Leadership newspapers. Now, that's the lead story for the New Telegraph. It's a midsection. It says, Biafra, that's the kicker. Tension in Southeast. And governor imposes curfew as Abia boys. 2 feared dead as soldiers, IPOB clash in Rivers. Troops invade NUJ Secretariat, assault journalists. Ohaneze and senators demand military withdrawal. Details of the story can be found on page 4 of the New Telegraph. Now, below that, happy news coming from Lagos. It says 4 kidnapped Lagos pupils return to school. Now 4 of the kidnapped pupils, of course, who were the Lagos State, senior and junior model colleges in Mola and Ekbe. We all recall their story. For several weeks, they were held captive by the abductors. Now they're back to school, and you can see them there in their uniform, complete uniform, shirt sleeves, and ties with their knickers, I believe, as we used to call it in those days. Second list story immediately below there, 2015. That's the kicker. It says, why we rejected attempt to stop Buhari. That's attributed to the CJ. The CJ stands there, there is for the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court. The Chief Judge of the Federal High Court explaining that he's due for retirement, by the way, in a matter of days, and this is part of the valedictory section head for him, and it's explaining why they rejected attempts to stop Buhari from the 2015 election. Sitting too long increases early death risk. That's the health story, details on page 32. Now let's go back up again, this time above the nameplate. It says above the nameplate, federal government tackles MDAs over 687 billion naira revenue shortfall. Lords JAMB and the master over remittances. And then below the nameplate, it says 4 police recruits die in auto crash. That's on page 8. Wike pledges healthcare facilities revival. In 2019, Kalu tasks Buhari and Oyegu on APC unity. NNPC begs vandals and moves to safeguard pipelines. That story is in greater detail on page 31. Bio.
Yes, thank you, Kinsley. Governor Ekpeazulu of Abia State has imposed curfew from yesterday up till Friday between 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Because of the state of the uneasiness in the state. The governor, after a state security meeting, said, for the past few days, security searchlight occasioned by skirmishes between IPOB with men of the Nigerian army has become a matter of concern. Therefore, persons residing within the state are enjoined to be calm and law-abiding, and they should go about their lawful duties. Government recognizes the right of freedom of movement of all Nigerians, but the object to influx of people into Abia from other places has unsettled the peace in the state. Abia will cooperate with security agencies to maintain the rule of law and order in the state. However, across the state in Rivers, it is reported that 3 persons were reported killed and several others injured due to invasion of an area called Oyibo. It was said that the group had allegedly responded to a call over a London-based Radio Biafra to move to Umuahia, and members caused stampede and became riotous. In fact, it's reported that a police van was burned down and people closed shop and business areas. The army and the police have since returned there and restored order. The several papers are putting the headlines differently. The Nation says confusion over IPOB soldiers clash in Rivers. The Sun says 2 killed, scores injured, others wounded as soldiers and IPOB clash. But Punch says the military IPOB clash, Abia declares curfew, and Ohaneze demands withdrawal of soldiers. It was a busy day for President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday as he commissioned a hatchery that has the capacity to process 180 tons of corn, 750 tons of soya beans to produce 360,000 tons of animal feeds a year. That hatchery is also capable of producing 1.6 million day-old chicks in a week and is said to be the biggest in Africa. President Muhammadu Buhari, while commissioning, says agriculture is an option to diversify our economy, and it means that we must be able to feed ourselves. He observed that recent growth that saw the nation come out of recession can only last if and we continue to it permeates to the grassroots. He observed that now there is a reverse in migration because people are now moving from the cities back to the villages to boost agriculture. This initiative is a private sector one, and he says it started with one in Kebbi, another in Kano, and now in Kaduna. Next couple of days, there will be another elsewhere, and that means that agriculture is driving the economy now. It was also a busy day when he received the Ghanaian president. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo said, "You know, we are Africans. I came to see for myself how he is." He said the president is vigorous and very engaging in our affairs, and therefore we received issues of interest. We review issues of interest to boost both countries and also issues of ECOWAS. He declared, "Our big brother in Nigeria is well."
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. Just because you said it's been a very busy day for the president, There's also a story involving Muhammadu Buhari, this time from Sokoto. If you go to page 7 of Daily Trust newspaper, you might be able to see the story there. So you can't immediately see the story on the front page. It says that the governor of Sokoto has appointed Malam Muhammadu Buhari Dasuki as the managing director of Sokoto Investment Company.
That's another Buhari, of course.
That's Muhammadu Buhari Dasuki. That's right. He's the son of the late Sultan, of course, Ibrahim Dasuki. That's Muhammadu Buhari Dasuki, MD of Sokoto Investment Company.
All right, quickly, still some other stories on the front page of this day. Above the nameplate, we have Kachuku, that's Minister of State Petroleum. Nigeria will oppose all output cuts. And there is a rider to that. OPEC malls extending production curbs by over 3 months. That story continues on page 12. And still on the front page there, federal government markets 100 billion naira sovereign sukuk. This is arousing investors' interests.
There is this human interest story I want to draw attention to.
Okay.
3 men, in fact it is 4 women and a man have been arrested in Germany for smuggling Nigerian husbands into Germany. How did they do that? Nigerian men are smuggled into Germany. They import women from Portugal, and when they meet there, they get them married as a means of getting residence permit. Also, the Portuguese police and the German police are now asking questions about 700 women who are now pregnant. They are all persons waiting status to be accepted into Germany. And they seem to say, we are pregnant for German men, we are carrying German children, give us residency.
Best of luck to them. That's basically all kinds of things you have with shotgun marriages and so on. By our Toby, that's the most that we can take. And then we do hope that there will be a knock-on effect on the commissioning, following the commissioning of particularly with livestock feeds. Yes. It's been a major concern. You know,
the quantum of persons to be employed, veterinary doctors are going into.
That's right. But we also hope that they take care of antibiotics, because we discussed on this program, we had guests who were talking about the role of antibiotics in animal feeds as part of the reason why you were having human resistance, as it were, to antibiotic treatment. Of course, those are issues that they will deal with when the plant gets into full-scale operation. Baya Toby, thank you for being here. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, JAMB and the 2017-18 admission, particularly with regard to 120 cutoff mark, 30 per subject for the year.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Happier by Chivita. Burst of refreshment.
House of Chi
makes a Naija mom powerful.
I encourage my kids to learn new things, and if they get hurt, I rely on the power of my Dettol's 1 capful to fight germs.
My family needs protection from germs. I use the power of Dettol's 1 capful to disinfect surfaces and clothes.
I trust the power of Dettol's 1 capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's 1 capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be a powerful Naija mom with Dettol.
Chivita Active Fruit Juice. Unique quality blend of 6 citrus fruit juices.
Want to dance?
Chivita Active. Be active. Do more. Get more out of life.
House of Cheese.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The program is Good Morning Nigeria, showing live on the network service of the NTA. Now, as a prompt for our conversation this morning, taking a look at the JAMB cutoff marks, Omotola Module has put together this background report, and we'll set the stage for our discussion.
The establishment of the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, JAMB, in 1978 became necessary after the clamor for standardization of admissions into Nigerian universities. The clamor for provision of central examination was aimed at ensuring equitable provision for candidates from across the country. The process seemed infallible until the late 80s into the 90s, when several challenges, including examination malpractice in JAMB, emerged. Since then, JAMB has continued to metamorphose in line with the growth of institutions and number of candidates seeking admission. The introduction of post-UME in 2005, which later became post-UTME examination, coming at the instance of universities who wanted to verify candidates with JAMB results, is one of the challenges the body has had to deal with. While this controversy is being put to rest, the 2017-2018 policy meeting held in Abuja, where admission officers of all tertiary institutions in Nigeria, as well as registrars and vice-chancellors, provosts and rectors were in attendance, an adopted recommendation is reported to have reduced cut-off marks for admission to tertiary institutions. The meeting rose to announce the adoption of 120 as cut-off mark for admission into universities, 100 for polytechnics and monotechnics, as well as 110 for innovative enterprise institutions. This policy has since generated controversy across the country, with many institutions outrightly rejecting it and calling for a reversal. Those against it say it will be the final nail on the coffin for the falling education system in the country, as candidates will no longer aim high while merit will be compromised. JAMB has defended the new cut-off mark, saying it represents the minimum standards which higher institutions are not expected to go below. They are, however, expected to set their maximum according to their Senate decisions. It believes that the cutoff mark, which is a reason why many have had to abandon their initial desire for certain courses for the available, while others take the pain of resitting for the exams, sometimes severally, will be checked. This JAMB argues will further reduce the quest for tertiary education outside the country, which has become attractive and encourage capital flight out of the country. The question many are raising, however, are who stands to gain or lose from the new cutoff mark policy? How will the policy affect the quality of candidates and the education sector as a whole? And can this policy stand the test of time? Join us on Good Morning Nigeria as we analyze the issues.
All right, thank you very much, Mojola, for that elaborate background report. Now we have guests with us in the Abuja studios as well as from one of our network centers to begin discussing this issue. First, at this time, we'd like to welcome the Vice Chancellor of Nasarawa State University here at in Kefi, that's next door to us here in Abuja, Professor Mohammed Mainoma. Professor Mainoma, a pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we also have with us here in the studios former Vice Chancellor of the IBB University, Lapai in Niger State, Professor Ibrahim Kolo. Professor Kolo, I'm delighted you're with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yes, joining us in the Abuja studio, we have Chief Sylvester Onoja. He's a former Commissioner for Education in Kogi State and is also, well, a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. We'd like to appreciate Chief Onoja for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
And to Enugu Center, we go now. We are being joined by Professor Christian Aneke as a Vice Chancellor, Godfrey Okoye University in Enugu. Professor Aneke, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Very much indeed for inviting me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, and of course my colleague, we are gentlemen of the press, by the way. Let's begin by going back to what occurred last month when there was the policy meeting, and then there was the subsequent announcement that the cutoff mark for admission into universities this year will be 120, poly and monotechnics 100, that's scored for the 5 elite subjects, and the so-called enterprise institutions 110. But subsequently, there were a number of statements that tended to indicate that stakeholders who presumably were present at the meeting were resigning out of the agreement, each of them announcing, as it were, separate minimum cutoff marks. Professor Mainoma, let's begin with you. Why do we appear to have conflicting accounts as to what transpired, or adherence to the agreements reached at the August meeting with regard to setting the cutoff mark for admission this year?
Yeah, the issues are actually not as presented. There seems not to be any disagreement as to those that were in the meetings and the policymakers. What appears is misinterpretation from those that actually listen. Because the issues are straightforward. It is a normal process for JAMB to have this policy meeting, and year in, year out, you sit down and you review depending on the performance of the candidates during the examination. So what is very normal to have a minimum, and then institutions have a cutoff from the very basic minimum. So it is not new. Actually, even when it was at 180 for last year, for instance, you have universities having 200, you have universities having 220. It is normal. But what happened this year is that it appears to me, because the outcome of the results, the outcome of the examinations was poor. Because, for instance, if you take my university, the total number of people that scored 180 and above were not up to 10,000. But last year, for those that scored 180 and above, there were over 30,000. So you find out that if you are going to select 4,000 candidates, among those that pass 180 and above, will not have the number of candidates in the university. So JAMB and the policymakers at that point decided that, okay, since JAMB itself is a selection examination. You know, remember, it is not something that you're going to use for any other purpose except for entering the university. So it is just a selection examination. And you say, this is the result. So how many people can you accommodate? From what level can you begin to accommodate them? And that is just the idea. So you'll find in some universities, they have enough above 180. So they can take from 180. In some universities, they have enough above 160. But if you say that there are universities that cannot get any candidate if you do not bring it as low as 120.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Minoma. Now, let's quickly return to Enugu. We'll fill the polls of our guest who seated there, Professor Christian Andeke, of course, Vice Chancellor Godfrey Okoye University. Now, high or low cutoff mark, is there really an over-dramatization of this position for admission?
I think there is. I mean, I don't know what the whole controversy is all about. It's a normal thing in all universities, in all over the world, that university will normally decide how low or how high it can go with the tests it is administering for admitting students into the university. What JAMB is saying is that universities should be able to decide, of course, with a minimum standard, should be able to decide how high or how low it can go in the candidates, and the marks of the candidates is actually admitting into the university. So the whole controversy is actually a little bit strange to me, because just as we've heard, it's normal. It's something that has been happening over the years. And JAMB says, look, let's try to streamline what we have been doing, and let's have a kind of minimum standard, and each university is free to go as high. And it doesn't say anything actually about the quality of the students. Because at the end of the day, you see that there are some students who enter the university with a very high mark, and in the course of their studies, they are not very helpful, they are not very strong. And those who enter the university with low marks will be very, very strong, at the end of the day. So it's actually what happens when they enter the university, how they study, how the lecturers approach their work, and how everything plays together that actually decides what the students will be. Let us not try to overemphasize the entry point, the entry behavior of the students. The exit behavior is very important in the life of students.
Thank you very much, Professor Aneke. Okay, back to us in Abuja. Professor Ibrahim Kolo, if these are normal situations, if are normal considerations, where there's a negative trailing to what is up with JAMB since the meeting took place in August?
To the extent that there are usually policy meetings every year, it's normal. To the extent that JAMB suggests and recommends a baseline for admission, i.e. the cutoff mark, it's also normal. What has brought about the controversy this year is the lowering of the standard. 120 simply means 30%. And I want to know whether 30% really amounts to a pass or a fail. Let me quickly disagree that entry points don't matter. The level at which you enter goes a long way to determine the extent to which you graduate, either with a first class or a second class upper or a lower second class. And the issue really is, if you look at it over the years, JAMB has correlated very strongly with the NECO and WAEC. You hardly find students with their very good 5 credits, including English and mathematics, that will go below 180. Some of them do go, certainly, but most of them, if you have 180, it does correspond with your, the number of credits that you have in NECO or WAEC. But when you lower the standard, the signal you send to the outside world is that you are now taking weak students into your system. We all agree, quality and standard of university of education in Nigeria is down. Whether we like it or not, we have to agree on that. And as long as it is down, you don't again throw in any other factor that will further lower the standard that is already depreciated. And that is where the controversy arises. So the cutoff mark of 120. And then take a very good example. You have put the cutoff mark for colleges of education at 100. That's precisely 25%. And you are talking about quality teachers. How are you going to get quality teachers out of the system with 125%? I mean, definitely you have completely thrown away teacher education. You have simply said anybody, whether you fail or pass, you can go to teachers' college. Yet we are talking about producing quality teachers for quality education. This is where the problem lies. I would have preferred a situation where JAMB will throw it open rather than lower, and then you carry the can. I would prefer a situation where JAMB would say, look, this is the performance. This is the mean performance this year, as the professor from Enugu was saying. We have now graded. Anything below X mark is a fail. Anything above X mark is an ordinary pass. Anything above X mark is a good grade. Now, you universities go and decide. Take your decision as to whether you want to take fail. After all, the JAMB registrar himself said very clearly that they did that. Their JAMB is now essentially for purposes of ranking. And yesterday, in one of the newspapers, I think this The Sun, it was already reported some groups are already grading universities into A, B, and C. And you need to see the list of universities they placed in the A category, the list of universities they've placed in the B category. So where are we going?
All right. Professor Ibrahim Kolo, thank you very much. We'll come again to the market implications of what's going on now with regard to the admission considerations. Let's bring in Chief Sylvester Anoja, former Commissioner for Education in Kogi, and also former Principal of King's College in Lagos. Chief Anoja, you've listened to the arguments. First, they say that the performance this year is poor and therefore lower the threshold for admission for one of the criteria for admission. What are your thoughts with regard to not just universities but also poly monotechnics and then colleges of education where you need to score only 25% to get admitted?
Well, thank you very much. I am very, very saddened. It's most unfortunate. Most unfortunate. It's most unfortunate that we deliberately kill education. I want to go back each time I come here to say, look, I have some institutional knowledge about education. The first time that any kind of direction was given to Nigerian education, when, how education should go in Nigeria, was as far back as 1882 in the colony, in Lagos. A road map was set for education in 1882. It was revised in 1887. At that time, there were few schools. Knowing fully well that by 1843, we had the first primary school in Nigeria. By 1850 to 59, we had the first secondary school. 1855, we had the second secondary school in Nigeria. And we have always gone for quality. We have always gone for quality. And when you glorify 130 as a teacher, what it means is 30%. 30. And people talk about 200 as being something reasonable. 200 is 50% because it's 200 over 400. We should not compromise the quality of education. I keep on saying that this is a country we do not have respect for arithmetic. Arithmetic tells you that definitely 30 is not half of 100. Why should our universities contemplate? There is this language now, the new digital age, that garbage in, garbage out. How dare you ask people who have 30% to go to universities? Those are the people who are going to be decision makers in this country in the next 30, 20, 25 years. And we have set a direction for ourselves in this country that we want to be among the best 20 economics in 2020. How do we go there with lower standards? I will not be surprised that one day we will sit down at a conference to decide whether 2 plus 2 is 4 or 5. We should now concentrate on making out of our own children international citizens, citizens of the world, not Nigeria. And now let me follow what Professor Kolo has said, the third one. If you want to go to a teacher training institution, all you need is 100. That's 25%. Those are the ones who are going to teach who do not know. We have put in place people who do not know to go and teach those who do not know. We want to bring the generation of this, our country, that we in about 23 to 30 years will not be in any reckoning. Because if anything happens to education, we are finished. And it started happening. I give an example. I said by 1882, the first document on how education should be run was put in place, was right in 1887 and all that. The West led, I want to give an indication of how education is going in Nigeria. The western part of Nigeria came first to education. First, they had the first secondary school, the teacher training institutions, they had the first university, and of course the most pragmatic decision on education was taken in 1955. But in the last 5-6 years, only Lagos has come into reckoning by WAEC, what WAEC results. Only Lagos State of the southwest states has been able to make the first 10. Only Lagos. It's good to hear and that in the east, for example, they are making progress. All the eastern states are making the first 10. And the entire north, only Taraba is among the first 10. I give you some statistics. For example, Ondo in 2011 was 14th, Ogun was 20th, Oyo 27th, Osun was 30th. And in 2014, Ekiti was 12th, Ondo was 13th, Ogun was 18th, Osun was 22, and Oyo was 24. Now, if those who were in the forefront of education have started collapsing, it's an indication that something is wrong. And in the entire north, only Taraba made the first 10. Now, what bothers me about education in this country, I don't know where we are going, because there's too much politics in education. It's only political consideration that will bring people to come and decide on what merit is.
All right, Chief Anoja, thank you very much. Again, we'll come back to you later in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in again Professor Menoma. Professor Menoma, of course, you've listened to the views of your brother Professor in Enugu, as well as Professor Ibrahim Kolo here. Let's back up slightly. Perhaps if the information is out there, let's have an indication of it. Do we know, for instance, what the causative factors are in the low performance that we have seen of JAMB candidates this year? I'm asking this question against the background of the issues that actually preceded the examination. You know, candidates had a lot of challenge getting through with their registration. It was quite tedious, and then JAMB also introduced what they call the mock exam. What then was the use of the mock exam if we didn't pre-test them and then put them in, on a sound footing? Now we are here saying that 30% would appear to be a reasonable threshold to get people in. Do we have a sense of why the students have performed so poorly?
Yeah, you see, the truth of the matter is that anything new will certainly come with its challenges. The whole idea of the CVT itself, you know, how many of the secondary schools actually have hands-on practices on these computer and computer-related issues? So it is really a challenge that, and this is an examination that is just one-off. It does not, like they always say, one-off examination may not necessarily be a true test of knowledge. And you'll find out that some of these candidates, if it were a case where somebody is saying that we are going to take 2 credits, or are going to take 3 credits, you may be talking about lowering standard. But this is a situation where it is just a qualifying examination. That we are saying, if JAMB had decided, okay, they have added 60 marks to every candidate, who will have come to say that there was lowering of standard? That we have done the examination, we have found out that the totality of, we are talking about access to these universities. What sense does it make that you have an examination where it is supposed to be a qualifying examination, and at the end of the day, you say it is only 10% of the candidates that can be admitted.
That's my question.
There is space.
That's my question.
Yes.
Were the tests too difficult, or were the students candidates poorly prepared for the examination? What do we know?
You see, for me, I don't have an answer to that because I have not seen the question papers. I was not part of the examination. I have not accessed I am not in a position to determine the quality of the examination.
But over the years, there have been this constant.
You can go to another institution and so on and so forth. So that probably will address your question, but we'll allow Professor Anyeke to also respond to that, as well as Chief Alonja, but that will be after this short break.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No. They are spread through germs on your hands. Your hands collect germs that causes diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is wash, wash, wash your hands. With Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
Another edition of TV Guide magazine is out with revealing accounts of trending stories. With the dwindling oil revenue, he says there is no reason to worry.
We strongly believe that culture is Nigerians' new oil. And we're going to show that by creating wealth, our art and culture will be a statement for all of us.
Our cover story is on Otumba Olusegun Runchewe, Director General, National Council for Arts and Culture. For upcoming TV presenters, elegant Elizabeth Banu tells you what it takes. A peep into the activities of the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative, a mandate being fulfilled. A trip to the Yankari Games Reserve at Safari in Bauchi State brings you closer to nature. And the Oshun Osogbo Festival, our culture, our pride. Professor Adiku, the Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, tells us what it means to manage a university, plus our regular features, star profile, media issues, relationships, young minds, entertainment, sports, and lots more. Pick your copy now at the vendors or at every NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, still your indispensable companion.
If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria. We're taking a look at the JAMB examination cutoff points, Furore, and already the arguments and the discussion has been on here in the studio, as well as the studio in Enugu. We still have our professors in the studio. Professor Ibrahim Kolo, former Vice Chancellor of IBB University. We have Professor Mohammed Minoma, Vice Chancellor of Nasarawa State University. The professor in Enugu is Professor Christian Anyeke, and also Chief Sylvester Onoja. Now, Chief Onoja, yes, a number of points have been raised, and let's take a look deeper into what exactly this is going to be doing? Oh, yes, we already started an issue of quality of education, the capital flies, and also some other areas. Now, there are other indications about institutions having never filled 70% of their admission capacity in the last 10 years. Is this in any way pushing that argument from JAMB?
Well, thank you very much indeed. I think that the argument is a basic one. And I mean, we don't need to defend what cannot be defended. All of us here, sitting here, not many of us went home in those days to tell our parents that we made 50% and were congratulated. There's something fundamentally wrong with the system we are using with Nigerian education. We are only paying lip service to education. Unfortunately, education is the only future we have. If we do not get education right, we will never get anything right in this country. And we cannot do that by lowering standards. We are taking ourselves out of the community of nations. It's like me as a teacher. I go to the class and I ask the students 2 plus 2. In the class of 30, 24 said 6. And then 6 others say 4. Majority carries the vote. So those who say 2 plus 2 is 6, they're right. Well, it's not good. What JAMB is doing is discouraging the teachers out there and parents. That is how public schools died in Nigeria. Private universities have come, and they want to please private universities and some other backstreet universities so that every Nigerian will go home with a degree. It's not possible, it's not done. What is wrong is that basic education has been neglected. The only way we can get education right is for us to go back to basic education, to go to secondary education and get it right. Right decisions have not been made. Education at the lower level has been abandoned, and that is what is producing the results that we are getting today. If we address basic education and secondary education, like I've always said, secondary education in this country is an orphan. Secondary education has no regulatory body. The NUC regulates universities. The NBTE regulates polytechnics and monotechnics. NCC regulates colleges of education. But who is regulating secondary education? Secondary education is an all-commerce game. And that is what is now happening to the private universities. Now, NUC came out with statistics some years ago that only 43.7% of those who teach in conventional universities possess the PhD degrees. And for any university to award degrees, you must have 80% of the teaching staff with PhDs. Now, if only 43.7% are teaching in public universities, who are those teaching in those private universities and some of the universities? Are they qualified to even offer any degrees? There are some states that in the last 10 years have not been able to make 10% pass in West African School Certificate Examination and in ECHO. So who are those going to those universities? Do we really need the number of universities we have? Must we fill every place in the university? And above all, you talk about people with 25% going to be teachers. Those, how 25% you are good to be a teacher. And a teacher is supposed to be better than his students. In some other countries, it's only the best that go for teaching. But now, not only that, but the worst now go to teach. So we are setting a tradition of mediocrity. We are lowering standards. We are mortgaging our future unless we address education. And there are so many things responsible.
All right, Chief Onoja, thank you very much. Let's return to Professor Anyeke, the Enugu Network Center. Professor Anyeke, what is your reaction to the claim in certain quarters that what we have seen this year with regard to the policy establishment of 120 as a cutoff for universities is, as it were, an appeasement of private universities who are struggling in most cases to gain students, and therefore they are pressured by the market?
Let me say it will not be right to move away from the issue. The issue is the cutoff mark, and why JAMB decided to choose 120 as the cutoff mark for this year. Of course, there will be theories flying around. The reason is private institutions, private universities want lower marks and all that. JAMB wants to play some people. These are all theories that we have not actually tried to prove. What is very important is that we are talking about minimum, and many universities are certainly not going with this minimum, private and public. Many are going up to 180 and 200 and above. That's actually the point. It's an experiment. I keep saying this is an experiment. Over the years, JAMB has been experimenting on how to, fix the problems we have in admission of candidates and the irregularities we have here and there. And this year, this experiment is coming up, and of course, I'm not surprised that a lot of things have been said about the new experiment. Let us wait and see what this is going to result into, whether it's actually going to lead to lowering the standard we have. I like what Professor Naja has said about secondary education, because this is actually where the problem is, not so much with the universities as with the lower level of education, not just secondary but also nursery, primary education. If you check countries like Finland, you see that the best heads are placed in these lower levels. A teacher in nursery school, in a nursery school or in a primary school in Finland has a minimum qualification of master's degree, and it's also considered one of the finest brains we have in the country. But here, of course, in our own part of the world, somebody's not so brilliant, somebody's not so smart, we say go and teach at primary school in the nursery school section. If we address the issue of standard in the lower levels, of course, we may not be talking about universities and lower standard. And we know, of course, that many private universities are doing well. We know that many of them actually have the best brains we have in the country within, and many have brains also from outside the country, professors. Many have international collaborations. Their students are excelling at different levels. So I do not think that a private university will actually be accused of lowering the standard of education. Private universities actually exist to increase the standard. And if they don't do this, it means it is a great disservice to our nation. The issue of teachers, the teachers we have at the lower level must be something we have to address. The quality of the teacher, lowering of the marks for the teachers, may look like trying to lower the standard. But standard is something of so many factors. It's not a factor of the entry behavior or the entry grade. It's actually what happens mainly in the institution. I get worried that even the best heads we have are not teaching. They are not teaching the students in such a way that they can actually become fine products by the time they graduate. Much as we are not happy about the grade with which they are entering, because of the standard of the schools they are coming from, let us address the issue of fixing the problem when eventually they enter a college of education or polytechnic or the university. That is very important to me. It is very important to me that lecturers actually do the work. I hate hearing lecturers taking money from students or sorting and all that, and at the end of the day the standard actually dies. The standard dies in the institution, not at the point of entrance. It is within the institution that it dies. When there are no books, when there are no reading facilities, when you have the best heads and are not actually delivering, when the professors are going everywhere in the world and doing their work and not doing what they're supposed to do in the university, the standard falls. That's actually the point. I look forward to a time actually when we will have another examination after 4 years for all students coming from different universities. Whatever you may want to call it, we may have to experiment with that and see what is actually happening in our institutions. I have the feeling that some enter a university with a very good grade, but at the end of the day, they become intellectually poorer than they were when they entered the university. I have that feeling, and we may try to have an examination that will actually check what is happening from the time the student enters until the time the student finishes. And also something that will also check the standard of the universities. It's not JAMB alone that will be able to give us the standard of universities, but actually the products, a kind of test for graduates of universities or institutions may be the right thing to do.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Aneke. Now we have reactions coming by way of Twitter from our viewers. We'll quickly run through them and we'll continue with the conversation. From Mike Ayako is this tweet: 120 as JAMB cutoff mark. Should this be a dream? What a shame. This is an aberration. Nigerians should rise up against this malfeasance.
Olushola A tweets, JAMB has no meaning to me as far as the Nigerian educational system is concerned. I guess the Nigerian government should scrap that board.
From Victor Yosoma says, it says, cutoff marks are determined by the performance of students in the examinations. The implication is that the quality of education is dwindling. So sad.
Hassan Labran tweets, as a matter of fact, what JAMB did is to the detriment of our country's educational standard. The earlier they reversed it, the better for us.
Festus Akimboye has this tweet. The fear about JAMB's 120 cutoff mark is unnecessary because students' WASC grades will still be used to consider admission to universities.
Now, this is from the Twitter handle called Citizens Parliament. Now, the issue of cutoff mark shouldn't be about the quality of education. Even at 120 cutoff mark, you'll still catch candidates cheating.
Ashero Egberi has this tweet. Everyone loses because standards are being lowered, and it is definitely reflecting the quality of education and result therefrom.
And Dele Jack Solomon tweets, everyone seems to be blaming the JAMB registrar only for this miscalculation. What about the over 1,600 stakeholders that arrived at the consensual cutoff marks? Nigerians need explanation on the yardstick used for the benchmark of 120.
Ibeneme Dominic says the uncalled cutoff is clear reduction of standard and gross negative bandwagon move by JAMB based on the reason from JAMB.
Ruben Chimezie tweets, to me, the 120 cutoff mark is okay since some professors ask some students to pay 300,000 naira to gain admission that they are not qualified for. Jacob
Chile has this tweet. If a candidate cannot score up to 180, he should bend down and read more. 120 minimum gives university discretion to adopt it.
Dike Samuel tweets, the new cutoff mark of 120 will lower the academic standard and inject academic laziness in students.
Daniel Uday Endless has this tweet, 100 over 400, that is 30%. Therefore, the winner of the new cutoff mark is really the lazy student. The losers, Nigeria producing half-baked graduates.
Festus Akimboye, well, now most developed countries don't have cutoff marks for higher education. What's needed in Nigeria is more universities and colleges of digital skills.
A person with Shinese Sang as a Twitter handle says, policy enunciation by JAMB as regulator can have far-reaching impact on the perception of the public as it borders on the quality of education.
And then we have this from Lawal Kamal. Lawal Kamal says, our universities should leave the cutoff mark as it is and focus on post-JAMB tests to pick the better ones.
Prosperity Wonders is the Twitter handle. Last year, 180 was the cutoff mark. This year is 120. So 180 for last year minus 120 for this year is 60, which is next year's cutoff mark.
And Ibrahim Usman tweets, that's half of 120 this year, by the way. So all you just need to do is just score 15, and then probably answer 3 questions.
I have just a comment. Come on.
All right, Ibrahim Usman tweets, now JAMB cutoff mark is a serious setback in terms of our educational quality, and although those going abroad don't need it.
Dike Ogun Samuel says the Nigerian educational system loses because with the low cutoff mark, lazy students will overflood the institutions.
And Chibuzo Jonathan says the general standard of life in Nigeria has been cut off to low standard. Just convert your salary to dollars, you will see the cut-off standard.
Library Impact is the Twitter handle for this person. The controversy about JAMB cutoff mark is a needless one. All over the world, examinations have proven never to be a true test of knowledge.
But there's no other test that we have in the meantime.
That's what you have.
All right. So, but let's return to our guest. Just one point with regard to the controversy. I mean, it's been said that the JAMB, the UTME is one of the criteria you need for admission. The same way you also need to have the minimum qualification either from your WASC or NECO. And by the way, the point we're talking about earlier, it is the case that for foundation programs, even in the UK, all you just need is your correct number of credits either from WASC or from NECO. That's for the UK. But we have seen occasions in the past when the performance in WAEC or SSC as it's called was so low, was so poor. You never had persons, who could combine English and maths. But in those years, the universities did not say that because the performance of candidates was so poor that okay, now candidates cannot. If you don't have maths, no problem, come. If you don't have English, okay, come. We didn't hear that, did we?
No.
All right, now, Professor Kolo, my question is another level. We have also seen in recent years the campaign for equalization of HND holders and university degree holders. They've been saying, all right, no, they should be equalized because they spent 4 years and so on and so forth. The training is rigorous. When you have this kind of dichotomy of saying for persons who need to seek admission into polytechnics, you need to score only 25%, and then for those who are going to universities, you need to score perhaps 30%, does that exacerbate the dichotomy? Does that also exacerbate if you like, the conditions under which HND holders often labor in this country, that they are rated lower than university degree holders? How is the market going to react?
Certainly, Kingsley, it does exacerbate this situation. Who says polytechnic education should be inferior to university education? I don't believe in that. What I believe in strong terms is, like everybody else here has said, the outcome, the products of the system. My idea would always be that whether you did a polytechnic or a university, before you are engaged to work, you should go through an aptitude test, which is one area JAMB should also begin to focus upon. Overemphasis on achievement testing is doing JAMB no good at all. NECO, WAEC, NAPTEP already do achievement testing. It's time for JAMB to go to aptitude testing. You want to do BSc biology in the university, what are those qualities in you that actually makes you capable of doing well in biology? You want to do engineering, what qualities are in you? What do you possess? What cognitive capacities do you have that makes it possible for you to do engineering? You want to go into medicine, the same thing. This is different from achievement tests. Achievement tests are products simply of what you were taught and asked to reproduce in one way or the other. Aptitude tests are the innate capacities in you. Kingsley, as a lawyer, what are those innate capacities in you to practice law? Not minding that Kingsley is now in the broadcast industry. So the thing is, lowering standards. JAMB has done one good thing. The central admissions processing system that it has introduced. Fine and good. And I like that. But to go again to lower the standard, like somebody said in one of the tweets, who knows next year? And what guarantee do you have that indeed, even with 120, some universities will still not go to take below? Somebody said maybe next year it will be 60. And so JAMB is also opening itself up for people who are saying JAMB has no relevance, it should be scrapped, when it begins to lower its cutoff marks like this. So this is the point, and we must really take it. Admissions are based on a number of criteria. UTME score, the O levels, and then the carrying capacity of each university. I can assure you that even with 120, you will still have many candidates with that 120 who do not have the 5 credits required to go into the university. So you will still have...
But such are actually admitted in some of the universities.
That's the trouble, and that's where the trouble lies. So you sanction those universities that admit those who are not qualified. NUC has a way of sanctioning them. There is a link between NUC and JAMB. And they can always sanction those universities. And then with the introduction of the central admissions processing unit system, but those universities that admit such unqualified candidates can be dictated very easily. You should have stopped at that.
Okay. We'll see more tweets, Kingsley. Let's
that's right.
take
a number of tweets that we have. The tweets are pouring in, and then we'll take this next segment right away. That's Sunday Michael Amako with your tweet. Says, the reversal in JAMB's cutoff point gives room to miscreants and unmerited applicants to have a chance. Now, to some of us, we've had enough from JAMB. It's high time we scrap the body for institutions to do their own selection.
For Mudachi Isha, it says, if I was left to make 180 myself before I gained admission, I would have lost my dream. I graduated as the 4th best in a competitive university.
Now, Library Impact Hub, that's the handle for this respondent, says, besides, JAMB, by that declaration, has never stopped higher institutions from stepping up their respective threshold.
Negotiate Nigeria is the Twitter handle for this responder. 120 isn't a problem at all. Students score low in JAMB and come out with first class. JAMB has never been a true test of knowledge.
Were they admitting students who were scoring 120 in the past to any first class? Professor Menoma. All right, let's continue. Let's continue with the tweets. Mohammed Ibrahim tweets: let every institution have their own entry requirements or set their own entry examinations.
Adamo Danzuma says, my question is, how can we fight against favoritism in admission process?
Ebuka Ugu tweets: now the reduction of the cutoff mark by JAMB to from 180 to 120 is another corruption strategy. How can someone score 120 and is admitted together with somebody who scored 250?
Well, for Prosperity Wonder is interested in why we interested in the quantity of people that gains admission rather than the quality.
Now, we have this from Ayodele Abdul. It says, very sorry, Prof. If students fail, they should be told to go for a receipt and not to be managed because the future is critical.
Well, from Mudatir Ishak again, many dreams have been scuttled because of the 180 marks. I only discovered my potentials in college and later graduated as the 4th best in the class.
Shani Michael Amakoje, it's ironic that, and most awkward for JAMB that set the cutoff point to also begin to revise it. Why the reduction? If JAMB feels the assessment exam is too tough for the candidates, why not review the questions rather than this development?
For Library Impact again, what we know and have experienced over the years in our country is that knowledge, intelligence, well, actually abbreviated is something about good character, fails.
And Oganero Igbo tweets, it says, your guests are stranded at 120. I'm shocked. Make 120, enter university, pass all your courses and graduate. JAMB score shouldn't limit anybody.
Ebuka Ogo has this tweet: JAMB should be stopped from conducting examinations. Rather, they should be overseeing entrance examination into universities in Nigeria.
Oloide Abdul tweets: now the high cutoff mark schools have already set the standard for their own graduates, as the labor market will determine the fate of the graduates.
Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet: who said we don't need JAMB cutoff marks? With my teeming population size, we need it. Developed countries don't because they were able, and ellipsis marks will be continued.
Aloide Ayodele Abdul tweets: Professor Kolo, you are on point.
From Tayo, good morning, Nigerian. I think we should have had an official from JAMB in this all-important conversation. Well, JAMB was invited.
And indeed, we had tarried on the subject matter because the JAMB registrar was out of the country.
Exactly.
We spoke to him while he was outside the country. But of course, we have competent guests. 2 vice-chancellors who are here with us, former vice-chancellor and the others, plus of course the contributions we're getting from the guests now. Ibn Ahmed Dominic, fact is that those that made the old cutoff mark over the years have not all been admitted in our schools. JAMB cutoff now is a horrendous error. So those are the set of tweets that we have. In the meantime, as we said, a number of tweets that are still coming in. Professor Menoma, Vice Chancellor of National State University, Kefi, you're still here with us. Yeah. We have this new arrangement to say, hey, listen, what we have seen over the years, I mean, since JAMB was established almost 40 years ago, in 1978, and in the past, I think when it started, you could have 3 universities and then 3 courses. Now, it is the case that in recent years that if you do not make certain universities your first choice, you will not be considered. Private students also have the opportunity of choosing 1 or 2 courses. I haven't checked the forms lately. And now you are saying that, JAMB is saying that through the new caps, it might be able to redistribute candidates who do not get to be admitted in some high-pressured institutions. If that is so, why then, how do you relate that to this lowering of the grade? Assuming in your institution, for instance, you say 10,000 scored 1 round, 80 and above, your carrying capacity, of course, probably is less than that. I'm using as an example. And then you don't get to admit all 10,000. Now, instead of being stranded, the CAPS mechanism is such that the candidates could then be advised or be given the offer of choosing one or two other institutions, whether private or otherwise. Why was this not considered, along with the fact that, listen, you needed to maintain that rather than saying, as some persons have said in their tweets, allowing all kinds of persons, to now come in with one around 20, which is 30%.
It's actually. I think what you are saying may not necessarily be exactly correct. The fact that the basic is 120, it does not say that people who 120 will be admitted, and that there is stages in the admission process. The first stage is that they want to consider the first choice. So it is after they consider the first choice that these other rearrangements that you're talking about can take place. So what is important is that at the end of the day, you will find out that it is still the best candidates that will get admitted.
With 120?
No, it is the minimum that is 120.
Let me ask this question, Prof.
Yeah.
And I will also ask the question of Professor Anyeke.
Yes.
What would be your reaction if, upon graduation, your students, your candidates, your products are asked to come with their NYSC discharge certificate, come with their degree certificate, and also come with their JAMB score? And they say any person who scored less than a certain threshold will not be considered for the interview.
No, you see, as it is today, you find out that there are people who don't even do JAMB at all, and they come through direct entry.
Yeah, because they have a diploma or they have the A levels.
How would then they say
that will supplement it. If you have O levels, yes, let's see your JAMB score.
What
4 years? Excuse me, 4 years from now, yes. 5 years from now. Oh, you say they are rejecting our products. Professor Anyeke, Enugu Network Center. Let's hear your comments on this.
As much as possible, every university will try to go very high. I do not think that there is a serious university that wants to go low because of the implication. I understand that, and I understand also that already you have discriminatory tones, grade A universities and grade B universities and grade C based on this cutoff mark. So universities, I think, will try to go as high as possible. But if, of course, JAMB says this is the cutoff minimum, and you have the minimum, and then you have your work, and you have finished the requirements for rounding off your studies, I don't think that anybody is going to discriminate against you. But I know that most universities will be striving to actually present the best, take the best candidates and help them to finish their studies. I propose something that is, I think, that is very, very important, and something that will make all the universities sit up. Achievement test at the end of a degree program. This will help us to know actually what is happening in different universities, not so much the entry score, but what happens after the admission into the university. What happens between the time of entering the university and the time of finishing? That is actually very crucial. So if it is possible for us to have an examination, a kind of aptitude test or achievement test to determine the quality of institutions from this, I think that would be very helpful. And I think employers will be more confident in the system we have. JAMB has said this is the minimum. This is the minimum, and if JAMB says this is the minimum, I don't think that anybody would like to question that minimum. But no institution, I think, would like to go to the minimum. You know that this is actually maybe for 1 or 2 courses where you don't have a lot of candidates, you may go down, but normally a good institution, a good university will go as high as possible because you know the implication of that. But if it is possible to have an assessment test after 4 years, I think that would be a very good way of assessing the.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Christian Anyeke, Vice Chancellor Godfrey Okoye University, Enugu. Thank you. You joined us from our Enugu Center. I would like to appreciate you for joining us on the conversation this morning. Thank you
very much indeed for inviting me. God bless you.
Your closing remark. 30 seconds.
My closing remark is that we must pay attention to basic and secondary education. We should bring to an end the era where the universities have to do preliminary secondary education, and then before they have time to do the kind of products they are taking on It's just remedial secondary education we are going to do.
Professor.
Let us make education, and the basic education is the answer and the solution to what is happening.
Professor Kolo?
Let me say two things quickly. One, lowering the cutoff marks would not stop universities, some universities taking below the new cutoff. They will still go, many universities will still go ahead to do it for one reason or the other. Second point I want to make, I agree with Professor Neke. JAMB should reposition to do pre-entry academic aptitude tests and pre-qualification aptitude testing. That's where JAMB should now put its energy. Like he said, that will help in determining which universities, and that will help the ranking that JAMB is talking about.
All right, we'd like to appreciate you all. Professor Ibrahim Kolo, former Vice Chancellor of the IBB University, Lapai, Niger State. Thank you for coming. Former, yes, I said former Vice Chancellor. Thank you for coming on the program this morning. We also like to appreciate Professor Mohammed Mainoma, Vice Chancellor of Nasarawa State University, Kefi, Nasarawa State. Thank you for joining us. And also Chief Sylvester Onoja, former Commissioner for Education, Kogi State, and also former Principal, King's College, Lagos. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We hope to see you some other time. Okay, quickly now to our companion segments, top of which is sports. Let's take a look at what is happening.